Commander Allison Wright stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. The blue-white orb of Europa filled the display, its icy surface crisscrossed with rusty lines. Somewhere on that frozen moon, the research outpost had gone silent after reporting first contact with an alien species. "Play the last transmission again," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Lieutenant Jack Morrison nodded and tapped his console. The screen flickered, revealing the pale face of Dr. Susan Miller, the outpost's lead researcher. "Defiant, this is Europa Outpost. We've made contact with something. They call themselves the Zorlathi." Her voice crackled through static. "Initial. Communications were peaceful, but something's changed. They've released some kind of gas into our atmosphere. People are starting to panic. We need immediate—" The transmission cut off abruptly. Commander Wright frowned. "Time since last contact? 4 hours and 17 minutes, Morrison replied. "Science Officer Klein, any readings from the outpost?" Ethan Klein, a lanky man with wire-rimmed glasses, looked up from his station. "Yes, Commander. I'm detecting unusual atmospheric changes within the outpost dome. There's an unknown compound spreading through their air supply." "Harmful?" "Unclear. It's not causing immediate physical damage, but the chemical structure suggests it might target the nervous system." Wright nodded grimly. "Olivia, your thoughts?" Dr. Olivia Pearson, the ship's xenobiologist, stepped forward. She had been analyzing the data coming from the outpost's medical sensors. "The compound appears designed to trigger responses in the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. Heart rates among outpost personnel spiked dramatically after exposure. Based on these readings, I believe it's some kind of fear gas." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. "So they're not trying to kill our people, they're trying to terrify them," Wright said. "That seems to be the case," Dr. Pearson agreed. "But why?" Before anyone could offer a theory, Lieutenant Morrison straightened suddenly at his console. "Commander, we're receiving a new transmission from the outpost." On screen, the view screen flickered again. This time it showed the outpost's main laboratory, scientists and security personnel huddled together, their faces pale. Dr. Miller appeared again, looking disheveled. "USS Defiant, if you can hear us. Situation deteriorating. The gas is everywhere now. Everyone's experiencing intense fear, hallucinations, people seeing their worst nightmares." She paused, swallowing hard. "We can see the aliens outside the dome. Tall, gray figures, 6 limbs. They're watching us, studying our reactions. Like we're lab rats. Please send help. We can't—" The transmission cut off again. Commander Wright turned to her communications officer. "Get them back." "I'm trying." "Commander," said Ben Lopez, his fingers dancing across his console. No response. Wright made her decision. "Helm, take us in. Standard orbit around Europa." "Aye, Commander," replied the helmsman, Lisa Reeves. Wright turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Morrison, prepare a rescue team. I want Dr. Pearson, Lieutenant Delgado from Security, and Specialist Gray. Her experience with chemical warfare might prove useful." "What about a Marine escort?" Morrison asked. "Good thinking. Add Corporal White and his squad." As the officers moved to carry out her orders, the ship lurched suddenly. Emergency lights flashed red across the bridge. "Report!" Wright called out. Engineer Laura Mitchell's voice came over the comm system. "Commander, we've got a problem. Something just attached itself to our hull near the ventilation intakes." Klein was already scanning. "It's some kind of device. It's releasing something into our air filtration system." "Seal all vents," Wright ordered. "Too late," Mitchell responded. "The substance is already spreading throughout the ship." Dr. Pearson rushed to her station, checking the readings. "It's the same compound, Commander, the fear gas." Wright hit the shipwide comm button. "All hands, this is the Commander. We are being exposed to an unknown chemical agent designed to induce fear. Remain at your stations, medical team stand by." She turned to Dr. Pearson. "How long before we start feeling effects?" "Minutes, maybe seconds," the doctor replied, her voice tense. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. Morrison's hand moved to his sidearm unconsciously. Klein's fingers trembled slightly over his console. "I want emergency protocols ready," Wright said firmly. "If we start hallucinating or panicking, the computer will engage autopilot and—" She stopped as a strange sensation washed over her. The bridge seemed to darken at the edges of her vision. Her heart began to race. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Around her, the crew was experiencing similar effects. Klein gripped his console, knuckles white. Morrison's breathing became rapid and shallow. Dr. Pearson closed her eyes, fighting against whatever visions were trying to take hold. Wright felt a creeping dread climbing up her spine. Old nightmares threatened to surface. Memories of the Titan colony disaster where she'd lost half her crew. The crushing weight of command. The faces of those she couldn't save. Through sheer force of will, she remained standing, watching as her crew battled their own demons. Then something unexpected happened. Lieutenant Delgado, who had arrived on the bridge moments earlier, made an odd sound. At first, Wright thought he was choking or in pain, but then she realized he was laughing. It started as a small chuckle, then grew into hearty laughter. There was a wild, almost hysterical edge to it, but it was undeniably laughter. "Frank?" Wright asked, confused. He looked at her, tears forming in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Commander," he gasped between laughs. "It's just, my fear is spiders. Lots and lots of spiders, but they're wearing tiny hats. Why are they wearing hats? It's ridiculous." His laughter proved strangely infectious. Specialist Gray, who had entered behind him, pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting a smile. "What's happening?" Wright asked Dr. Pearson. The doctor looked just as puzzled. "I don't know. This isn't a typical response to fear stimuli." Across the bridge, more crew members began to show similar reactions. Klein was giggling at his station. Morrison had a strained smile on his face. "Commander," Lopez called out from communications. "The outpost is hailing us again." "On screen," Wright ordered, struggling against her own growing urge to laugh as the darkness in her vision transformed into something absurdly comical. Dr. Miller appeared, but instead of looking terrified, she was smiling widely. Behind her, the outpost personnel were laughing, some leaning against walls or sitting on the floor overcome with mirth. "Defiant," Miller said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Something weird is happening. The gas? It's not working like they expected. We're seeing our fears, but they've become funny somehow." Outside the outpost dome, tall gray figures stood motionless, their forearms hanging at their sides, their bulbous heads tilted in what could only be confusion. Commander Wright felt a smile break across her own face as her nightmare visions twisted into something she could only describe as a cosmic joke. "Dr. Miller," she said, fighting back a chuckle, "stand by for rescue. And tell our visitors that their weapon may have some design flaws when it comes to humans." As if in response, one of the aliens outside the dome raised all four of its arms, in what seemed like frustration or disbelief. The laughter on the bridge of the USS Defiant grew louder. 2 hours had passed since the fear gas first entered the USS Defiant's ventilation system. The bridge crew had mostly regained their composure, though occasional bursts of laughter still echoed through the ship. Dr. Olivia Pearson hunched over, her console in the medical bay, studying brain scans of affected crew members. The neural activity patterns made no sense, at least not according to everything she knew about fear responses. "This is fascinating," she muttered as Commander Wright entered the room. "What have you found?" Wright asked, her normally stern expression softened by a lingering smile. Dr. Pearson pointed to the screen. "The fear gas is definitely targeting our amygdala, the brain's fear center. But look at what's happening next." She tapped a colored section of the brain scan. Instead of triggering a pure fear response, the signals are crossing into areas associated with humor and laughter. "Any idea why?" "I have a theory." Pearson brought up a comparison chart. "Humans are unusual among species in how closely our fear and humor responses are linked. Think about it. We laugh when we're nervous, we seek out scary movies for fun, we tell jokes at funerals. Our brains have evolved to use humor as a defense mechanism against fear." Wright nodded slowly. "And the aliens didn't account for this?" "How could they?" Their psychology must be fundamentally different from ours. Pearson paused. I'd love to scan one of them. Just then, Lieutenant Morrison's voice came over the comm system. Commander, you need to see this. The alien ship is changing. Position. On my way, Wright replied. She gave Pearson's shoulder a quick squeeze. Keep working on this. I want to know everything about how the gas affects us. On the bridge, the main screen showed a sleek, metallic vessel moving away from Europa's orbit. Are they retreating? Wright asked as she took her seat. Morrison shook his head. I don't think so. They're maintaining position just outside our weapons range, and they're scanning us heavily. They're studying our reaction, said Klein from the science station. They must be confused by our response to their gas. Wright tapped her fingers on the armrest. Lieutenant Lopez, can you open a channel to them? Communications Officer Ben Lopez looked up in surprise. To the aliens? I can try, but we don't have a translation matrix yet. Just a visual signal, then. Let them see us. Lopez worked his console. Channel open. They should be able to see the bridge now. Wright stood and faced the screen. On it, they could now see the interior of the alien vessel. The bridge was dimly lit, cast in purple light. 3 of the tall gray Zorlathi stood watching. Their bulbous heads housed 4 black eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Their forearms hung at different heights along their torsos. For a long moment, humans and aliens simply stared at each other. Then Wright did something unexpected. She smiled. The alien's eyes widened slightly, an almost imperceptible reaction. This is Commander Allison Wright of the Earth vessel USS Defiant, she said clearly. We know you can hear us, even if you don't understand all our words yet. Your gas weapon was interesting, but not what you expected, was it? The aliens conferred, among themselves, making clicking sounds that the universal translator couldn't decipher. Wright continued. Dr. Pearson, would you show our guests what happened when we were exposed to their gas? Dr. Pearson, who had returned to the bridge, nodded and transmitted the footage from the ship's internal cameras. The screen split, showing the aliens on one side and the recording on the other, crew members laughing uncontrollably, supporting each other as they wiped tears from their eyes. The aliens watched intently. One moved closer to their screen, its head tilting in what seemed like confusion or fascination. Let's check on our people at the outpost, Wright suggested. Lopez switched the feed to show the Europa research team. The scientists had recovered from their laughing fits and were now going about their work normally, though with noticeably lighter spirits. Several were smiling as they analyzed samples of the fear gas. Dr. Susan Miller appeared on screen. Commander Wright, we've been monitoring the alien vessel. They haven't made any aggressive moves since their initial attack. Attack? Wright raised an eyebrow. Was it definitely an attack? Miller hesitated. Well, we assumed so. Why else would they pump fear gas into our outpost? Perhaps it was a test, suggested Klein. Or even a form of communication. Or maybe they simply don't understand humans at all, added Dr. Pearson. The communication with the outpost was suddenly interrupted as the alien vessel moved closer. The bridge crew tensed, but Wright raised a calming hand. Hold positions. I don't think they're planning to attack again. She was right. Instead of firing weapons, the Zorlathi ship released a small probe that moved toward the Defiant. They're sending us something, Morrison reported. No explosive materials detected. It appears to be a data package. Accept it, Wright ordered, but run it through every security protocol we have before opening anything. While the ship's computers processed the alien data, Dr. Pearson continued her analysis. Commander, I've been comparing notes with the outpost team. The effects of the gas are wearing off, but there's something else interesting happening. Go on, Wright said. People who were exposed are reporting increased feelings of euphoria and decreased anxiety, even after the hallucinations stopped. It's like the gas reset their fear responses, at least temporarily. Lieutenant Frank Delgado, who had been among the first to laugh, nodded vigorously. I've never felt so relaxed, Commander. Things that used to bother me seem trivial now. Fascinating, Wright mused. A fear weapon that ultimately reduces fear. Klein called out from his station. Commander, we've processed the alien data transmission. I think it's their language. A primer, similar to what we would send in a first contact situation. They want to talk, Wright realized. Put it through the universal translator and let's see what we get. The computer worked for several minutes, correlating patterns and building a basic translation matrix. Finally, Lopez announced, "We have partial translation capability now, about 60% accuracy." "Open the channel again," Wright ordered. The screen showed the Zorlathi once more. The tallest one stepped forward and made a series of clicks and whistles. The translator rendered its speech in a flat, mechanical voice. "Humans, unexpected reaction. Fear should cause running, hiding. Instead, sound making and facial movements. Explain." Wright suppressed a smile. "That sound making is called laughter. It's how humans sometimes respond to fear or surprise. We find humor in the unexpected." The alien seemed puzzled. "Purpose of humor?" Dr. Pearson stepped forward. "Humor helps us cope with fear and stress. It's a defense mechanism, a way to process difficult emotions." The alien conferring with its companions again before responding. "Concept unknown to Zorlathi. No. Humor in our evolution. Fear is tool, weapon, defense. For us," Wright explained, "laughter can be stronger than fear." The alien stared silently for a long moment. Then it made a declaration that the translator rendered simply as, "Humans strange. Interesting. More tests needed." The communication abruptly ended, and the alien ship moved back to its previous position. "More tests?" Morrison repeated nervously. "What do you think they meant by that?" Commander Wright's expression grew serious. "I don't know, but I suggest we prepare ourselves. Something tells me the Zorlathi aren't done with humanity yet." Dr. Pearson looked thoughtful. "At least we know their fear gas doesn't work on us the way they intended. What else could they try?" "That," said Wright grimly, "is exactly what worries me." The next 12 hours aboard the USS Defiant passed in uneasy quiet. The Zorlathi ship remained at a distance, silently watching. Commander Wright had ordered yellow alert status maintained and established a rotation so crew members could get some rest while keeping the ship at full readiness. In the science lab, Dr. Olivia Pearson hadn't slept at all. She sat surrounded by holographic displays showing brain scans, chemical formulas, and historical data. Lieutenant Nicole Carter, the ship's historical database specialist, worked alongside her. "I've found something interesting," Carter said, pushing her red hair behind her ears. "Throughout human history, we've consistently used humor in response to fear." She displayed a series of images on the main screen: ancient carnival masks with grotesque features, medieval jesters mocking death, soldiers in trenches sharing jokes, and comedians performing during wartime. "Look at these examples," Carter continued. "Soldiers making jokes in foxholes while under fire, horror comedy movies becoming popular during times of social anxiety, gallows humor in dangerous professions like firefighting or emergency medicine." Dr. Pearson nodded slowly. "So it's not just a quirk, it's a fundamental human adaptation. One that apparently the Zorlathi don't share," Carter added. The door slid open as Commander Wright entered, looking tired but alert. "Any progress?" "Yes," Pearson said. "I believe I understand why their fear gas affected us so differently than they expected. It's not just the chemical interaction, it's evolutionary psychology." She brought up a simplified diagram of the human brain. In humans, fear and humor are processed through interconnected neural pathways. When we're afraid, we can sometimes flip that emotion into laughter as a coping mechanism. "But the Zorlathi don't have this ability?" Wright asked. "Based on our limited data, I don't think they do," Pearson replied. "Communications Officer Lopez and I analyzed their language patterns. They have over 40 words for different types of fear, but no equivalent term for humor or laughter." Wright considered this. "What do we know about their evolution?" Lieutenant Carter took over, displaying the limited information they had gathered about the aliens. "Their home planet has minimal predators and stable climate conditions. They evolved as the dominant species without significant threats. so they never needed to develop psychological defenses against fear, Wright concluded. Precisely, Pearson agreed. Fear for them is purely functional, a tool for survival or control. The idea that a species could transform fear into another emotion is completely alien to them. Their discussion was interrupted by a chirp from the comm system. "Commander," Morrison's voice came through. "The Zorlathi ship is moving again." "On my way," Wright replied, heading for the door. "Bring your findings to the bridge." On the bridge, the view screen showed the alien vessel slowly approaching the Europa outpost once more. "They're scanning the outpost intensively," Klein reported, "from the science station, and they're releasing another probe." "Warn the outpost," Wright ordered. Lopez nodded. "Already done, Commander. Dr. Miller has sealed all external vents and everyone is wearing breathing masks just in case." The probe hovered outside the outpost dome, releasing a different colored gas, orange instead of the previous green. "What are they doing?" Wright wondered aloud. Klein studied his readings. "It's not entering the outpost this time. It seems they're just testing it in Europa's atmosphere. They're reformulating," Pearson realized. "Trying to create a version of their fear gas that will work on humans as intended." Wright frowned. "They want to see us afraid, not laughing." "Commander," Lopez called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Zorlathi on screen." The alien leader appeared, its 4 eyes blinking in sequence. The universal translator had improved, now rendering its clicking speech with better accuracy. "Human vessel," the alien began. "Our previous communication test failed. Your species showed incorrect response. We have adjusted our approach." "Communication test?" Wright repeated. "You mean the fear gas?" "That wasn't communication, that was an attack." The alien's head tilted. "Not attack, assessment. All new species must be assessed." Wright stood from her chair. "Assessment for what? Purpose?" "To determine usefulness, value, place in galactic order." Dr. Pearson stepped forward. "Commander, I think they're saying they use fear as a way to evaluate other species." "That's barbaric," Wright said. The alien continued. "Your species resists normal fear stimulus. Unusual. We have created enhanced version. We'll test, then decide." Before Wright could respond, the alien ended the transmission. "They're moving again," Morrison reported. "Coming straight for us this time." Wright's voice remained steady. "Shields up, but hold fire unless I give the order." The Zorlathi ship approached rapidly, stopping just outside the Defiant's shield perimeter. A larger probe than before emerged from its hull, moving toward the human vessel. "It's carrying a massive payload of the orange gas," Klein warned. "Much more concentrated than before." "Can our shields block it?" Wright asked. Engineer Laura Mitchell shook her head. "Not entirely. The particles are too small. They'll eventually penetrate our shield matrix." "Options?" Wright asked, looking around the bridge. Dr. Pearson had been thinking quickly. "Commander, what if we don't fight it? What if we use their own test against them?" "Explain." "They want to see us afraid. Let's show them something else entirely. Something they've never seen before." Pearson turned to Mitchell. "Can we modify our internal filters to actually enhance the effects of their gas?" Mitchell looked surprised. "Enhance it? We should be trying to filter it out." "Trust me," Pearson insisted. "If my theory is correct, a stronger dose might actually push our brains further toward the humor response, not fear." Wright nodded slowly. "Do it. And prepare the ship's external cameras. I want the Zorlathi to see exactly how we respond." As Mitchell worked on the environmental systems, the orange gas began to seep through the shields. Warning lights flashed as the ship's sensors detected the foreign substance entering the ventilation. "All hands," Wright announced shipwide, "we are about to be exposed to another dose of the alien fear gas. Based on Dr. Pearson's research, this may trigger hallucinations or feelings of fear, which your brain may convert to laughter or humor. Remember, this is a natural human response. Let it happen." The gas spread quickly through the ship. Within minutes, the effects began to show. Bridge crew members started to fidget, their eyes widening as they began to see their personal fears manifested before them. Wright herself saw the bridge walls melting away, revealing the endless void of space. Her breath caught. But then something shifted in her perception. The void wasn't terrifying, it was absurdly vast, comically empty. A giggle escaped her lips. Around the bridge, similar transformations were occurring. Lieutenant Morrison, facing a hallucination of hostile borders, was grinning as the imaginary enemies tripped over their own feet. Klein saw his feared academic failure as a slapstick comedy of errors. The laughter grew louder, more genuine than before. The crew wasn't just resisting fear, they were embracing the absurdity of it. "Are we transmitting?" Wright asked between chuckles. Lopez, fighting his own laughter, nodded. "Full video feed to the Zorlathi ship, they're seeing everything." On the screen, they could see the alien bridge crew. The Zorlathi were not laughing. Their postures had changed, bodies rigid with what looked like their own version of shock or alarm. "I think," Pearson said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes, "we've just turned the tables on their assessment." The Zorlathi ship retreated to a safe distance following the failed second test. For 3 days they maintained position, occasionally scanning the USS Defiant but making no further aggressive moves. The humans used this time to prepare. In the Yaki, ship's main conference room, Commander Wright gathered her senior officers. The mood was serious despite the lingering effects of the fear gas, which had left many crew members feeling unusually relaxed. "They're planning something bigger," Wright said, looking around the table. "I can feel it." Lieutenant Morrison nodded in agreement. "Their ship has been receiving transmissions from somewhere deep in the system. We think they've called for reinforcements." "How? Many ships?" Wright asked. "At least 3 based on the communication patterns," Morrison replied. "Estimated arrival time is 18 hours. Wright turned to Dr. Pearson. "How's your research coming along?" "We've made significant progress," Pearson said. "Working with Engineer Mitchell, we've developed a way to synthesize compounds that mimic human neurochemical reactions. Essentially, we can now produce our own version of what happens in our brains when fear turns to laughter." "And how does that help us?" asked Lieutenant Delgado. Specialist Heather Gray, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. Her expertise in chemical warfare was proving invaluable. "We can weaponize it," she said simply. The room fell silent. For a moment. Gray continued, "If we can introduce these compounds into the Zorlathi environment, it might disrupt their emotional control systems, not to harm them permanently, but to show them what it feels like when emotions don't behave as expected. Fight fear with laughter," Wright mused. "I like it, but how do we deliver it?" "That's where I come in," said Mitchell. "I've modified one of our probes to release the compound directly into their ventilation system, similar to how they attacked us." Wright nodded slowly. "A counteroffensive. But there's something else we need to consider." She brought up a display showing the comm logs. "Based on the translations we've managed to decode, the Zorlathi aren't just testing us for fun. They're evaluating us as potential allies against something they call the Void Eaters." "Void Eaters?" Klein repeated. "That sounds ominous." "From what we can gather, there's some kind of cosmic threat that destroyed the Zorlathi home system," Wright explained. "The Zorlathi are essentially refugees, searching for species strong enough to help them fight back." Dr. Pearson looked troubled. "So their fear gas wasn't just a weapon, it was a test to find allies brave enough to face this greater threat." "Exactly," Wright said, "and by laughing at their fear gas, we may have either impressed them or convinced them we're not taking the threat seriously enough." Lieutenant Carter, who had been analyzing the Zorlathi language and cultural references, spoke up. "In their communication patterns, there's a recurring theme of proper fear response. They seem to believe that fear is the only rational reaction to danger." "But humans know better," said Delgado. "Sometimes laughing in the face of danger is exactly what you need to do to survive." Wright stood up and paced the room. "We need to make them understand this, not just for our sake, but because if this Void Eater threat is real, we might actually need to work together." "So what's the plan, Commander?" asked Morrison. 3 parts, Wright said decisively. "First, we continue to analyze and prepare for whatever new version of the fear gas they might develop. Second, we ready our own neurochemical compound as a defensive measure. And third, We try to establish meaningful communication beyond these tests and countertests. As if on cue, the ship's alert system sounded. Lopez's voice came over the comm. "Commander, the Zorlathi ship is hailing us." "Put it through to the conference room," Wright ordered. The wall screen activated, showing the now familiar alien leader. Its posture seemed different, more rigid, possibly indicating stress. "Human vessel," it began. "Our assessment continues. Previous tests inconclusive. Your species shows abnormal response patterns. Final evaluation approaching." Wright stepped forward. "We know about the Void Eaters." The alien fell silent. Its 4 eyes blinking rapidly, and what the humans had learned was a sign of surprise. "Your species faces extinction," Wright continued. "You're looking for allies who won't break under fear. That's why you're testing us." After a long pause, the alien responded. "Correct. Void Eaters consume all. Many species tested, most fail. Fear overwhelms them. But not humans," Wright said firmly. "We feel fear, yes, but we've evolved ways to overcome it. Sometimes through courage, sometimes through cooperation, and sometimes through laughter. Laughter not useful against Void Eaters," the alien stated flatly. "You're wrong," Wright countered. "Laughter is one of our most powerful tools for facing the unknown. It helps us think clearly even when we're afraid. It bonds us together. It gives us hope." The alien seemed to consider this. "Concept difficult. Will require demonstration." "What kind of demonstration?" Wright asked cautiously. "Final test prepared. 3 Zorlathi vessels approach with pure fear essence, concentrated beyond previous doses. If humans survive with minds intact, alliance possible." The screen went dark before Wright could respond. "They're going to hit us with everything they've got," Morrison said grimly. Wright nodded. "And we're going to show them everything we've got in return." She tapped her comm badge. "All senior officers return to stations. Dr. Pearson, is your compound ready?" "It needs another few hours," Pearson replied. "You have 2, Wright said. "Morrison, contact the Europa outpost. Tell them to prepare for possible evacuation to the Defiant." "Aye, Commander." As the officers dispersed to their posts, Wright remained in the conference room for a moment. She brought up an image of the Zorlathi ship on the display. These aliens didn't understand humor or laughter. They only understood fear. How could she make them see that humanity's apparent weakness, our emotional complexity, was actually our greatest strength? An idea began to form. She tapped her comm badge again. "Lieutenant Delgado, meet me in security. I think I know how we can turn their final test into our greatest opportunity." Hours later, as the ship prepared for the approaching Zorlathi vessels, crew members could be seen making unusual modifications to their equipment. Security officers attached small speakers to their tactical gear. Engineers adjusted the ship's external communication array. And in the medical bay, Dr. Pearson put the finishing touches on a compound that might allow the Zorlathi to experience something they had never known before: the liberation of laughter in the face of fear. Commander Wright stood on the bridge, watching as 3 large alien ships appeared on the long-range sensors. "Ready or not," she said softly. "Here they come." The 3 Zorlathi vessels approached in perfect formation, their metallic hulls gleaming in the light of distant Jupiter. The USS Defiant held position between them and the Europa research outpost. Shields raised and weapons powered but not targeted. On the bridge, Commander Wright sat calmly in her chair. Around her, the crew worked with focused efficiency, their faces showing determination rather than fear. "They're in range," Lieutenant Morrison reported. "Open a channel." Wright ordered. Before Lopez could comply, the main screen activated. The Zorlathi leader appeared, flanked by 2 others who wore different markings on their gray skin. "Final test begins," the alien announced without preamble. "Pure fear essence will be released. Concentration 10 times previous level. If humans, maintain function alliance possible." "We're ready," Wright replied. "But first I want to propose an exchange." The aliens paused, their 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "Exchange?" "Yes. You subject us to your test, and we subject you to one of ours in return." The aliens conferred among themselves, making rapid clicking sounds too fast for the translator to process. Finally, the leader turned back to the screen. Proposal acceptable. Zorlathi will accept human test if humans survive Zorlathi test. Wright smiled slightly. Agreed. The screen went dark, and Morrison reported, "All 3 ships are launching probes. Let them come." Wright said calmly, "Remember the plan. Don't resist the fear. Transform it." Throughout the ship, crew members braced themselves. In engineering, Mitchell activated the modified environmental systems. In the medical bay, Dr. Pearson and her team prepared hypo sprays containing mild sedatives for anyone who might need help managing the intensified effects. The probes positioned themselves at key points around the Defiant's hull and began releasing clouds of deep purple gas. Despite the ship's best filtration efforts, the concentrated compound began seeping through. "It's entering all decks," Klein reported, his voice steady, despite the sweat beading on his forehead. The effect was almost immediate and far more intense than before. The bridge seemed to darken and warp. Each crew member began experiencing vivid hallucinations of their deepest fears. Wright gripped her armrests as the stars on the view screen transformed into gaping maws, reaching for the ship. Her heart raced, and her breath came in short gasps. Around her, she could see the others fighting similar battles. This was the moment of truth. The fear was overwhelming, far stronger than previous exposures. For several seconds, the bridge was silent except for rapid breathing and occasional whimpers. Then Lieutenant Delgado, true to form, broke first. He stared at whatever horror his mind was showing him, his body tense, and then suddenly relaxed. He began to chuckle. They're wearing little bow ties," he sputtered. "My nightmare monsters are wearing bow ties!" His laughter triggered something in the others. One by one, the crew members found the absurdity in their fears. Klein began giggling at his phantom academic failure. Morrison snorted at his visions of invisible enemies. Lopez held his sides as he laughed at the gibberish his translator was showing him. Wright felt the transformation too. The star maws became comically exaggerated like something from a children's cartoon. The existential dread of the void dissolved into an appreciation for its ridiculous vastness. "Status report," she managed between chuckles. "All sections reporting. Similar reactions," Morrison said, wiping tears from his eyes. "The fear is stronger, but so is the humor response." Dr. Pearson was right. "Are we transmitting to the Zorlathi ships?" Wright asked. "Full visual and audio," Lopez confirmed. "They're seeing everything." On the screen, they could see the aliens, watching them with what appeared to be confusion or disbelief. The translator rendered fragments of their conversation. Impossible response. Mental damage or superior adaptation? After several minutes, the purple gas began to dissipate. The hallucinations faded, leaving the crew tired but oddly invigorated. No one had broken down or been incapacitated by the fear. "I believe," Wright said, straightening her uniform. "We've passed their test. Now it's time for ours." She nodded to Dr. Pearson. "Ready?" Pearson picked up a small case containing the synthesized neurochemical compound and nodded. "Ready, Commander." "Lieutenant." Morrison, prepare the delivery probe. A sleek probe was launched from the Defiant, moving slowly toward the main Zorlathi vessel. It carried a small payload of the compound Pearson had created, a substance designed to temporarily alter the aliens' brain chemistry to allow them to experience the emotional connection between fear and humor. The aliens made no move to stop the probe. They had agreed to the exchange, and whatever else they might be, the Zorlathi appeared to honor their agreements. The probe attached itself to the hull of the alien vessel and released its payload into their ventilation system. Then everyone waited. For several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The aliens on screen continued to observe the humans, their expressions unreadable to human eyes. Then something changed. The lead alien's body language shifted. Its head tilted at an unfamiliar angle. Its forearms moved in an unusual pattern. "What's happening?" Wright asked. Dr. Pearson studied her readings. "The compound is working. It's creating new neural pathways, temporary ones, similar to our own humor response." On screen, The alien leader made a sound none of them had heard before, a strange, stuttering click that rose and fell in pitch. The other aliens turned to their leader in what appeared to be shock. "Is it laughing?" Delgado asked in wonder. "I think it is," Pearson replied, her voice filled with amazement. The first Zorlathi laugh in their entire evolutionary history. The alien leader seemed as surprised as its companions. It touched its throat area, then made the sound again, more deliberately this time. The other aliens watched in what could only be described as astonishment. When the alien finally addressed the humans again, its speech pattern had changed subtly. "Strange feeling," it said. "Fear remains, but different. Less controlling. Is this humor?" "Yes," Wright answered simply. "That's what we've been trying to show you. Fear doesn't have to control you, it can be transformed." The alien was quiet for a long moment. Useful adaptation. Perhaps necessary for Void Eater conflict. "We think so," Wright agreed. "Fear alone makes you freeze or run. Humor helps you think clearly even when you're afraid." "Alliance discussions must begin," the alien decided. "Humans have valuable perspective, different approach to fear." Wright smiled. "We'd be happy to begin those discussions." "Commander," the alien said, attempting the human title, "will affect last. This laughter?" "The compound will wear off," Dr. Pearson explained. "But the memory of the experience won't. And with time and practice, you might learn to create the response on your own." The alien made the laughing sound again, softer this time. Fascinating adaptation. Humans more complex than initial assessment indicated. As arrangements were made for formal diplomatic meetings, Wright looked around her bridge at her tired but triumphant crew. What had started as an attack, aliens using fear gas against humanity, had turned into possibly the most important first contact in human history, all because humans could laugh in the face of fear.